So today we're taking a trip to the Federal Office of Precious Metals at Geneva Airport, where they hallmark gold watch cases. And the way that works is, first of all, you register your mark, and then you take the marked watch case. You register the responsibility mark, so that mark indicates that you're responsible for the certifying that gold content, and then you take it to them, and they stamp it with it. Like if it's 18 karat gold, they stamp it with a Helvetia head, which is the bust of a woman, female bust, Helvetia, and that certifies that it's gold, or at least that you're taking responsibility for it, and they're taking responsibility for you. And the registration of there's a mark on the GG that looks like something that's in their database, so I wanted to ask them if their database shows if the registrant ever used that mark on anything else. So I'm not sure if they're going to tell me or not, but the interesting thing will be, if they do tell me, it would give me an idea of if the person was really in business and if the mark was used, or if the mark was used, as I think it was, just as a kind of probe to find out if there was a conflict, to try to find out who the mark owner was, or if the mark was used to look for the watch itself. Like if the watch was missing and you knew if the registrant was related to somebody who worked for or had worked for ETA or Swatch, and they knew about the watch and they knew the mark that was on it, and then the mark was lost, the watch was lost, they might register it so that if somebody found it, they would find that registration, they would contact them, and then they could say, hey, that's our watch. So I think it's probably one of those two things that's behind the registration, and not the first, which is I don't think that this person ever registered or made watches. The other thing about actually registering it, if it was made, like, let's say in 1991, because that's when the registration was filed, at that point they've made almost 100 million swatches. They celebrated 100 million in 1992. The design, the hinge design with the four lugs, was patented. Granted, it was patented in plastic only, but it was patented nonetheless. And there's a thing in patent law called the doctrine of equivalence, where something like that, you could still sue somebody for patent infringement, and you just say, well, we patented it for plastic, but gold is also a soft material and it's equivalent to plastic. And that you wouldn't want to do that if you were, like, in my analysis of why they patented plastic only at ETA, I said it's because the gold existed, and that if that's true, which I believe it was, then you wouldn't want to turn around and try to assert it against gold for the same reason that you didn't claim gold in the first place. But if that's not true, if it wasn't based on a gold watch, and the only existence of that gold watch was because it was a counterfeit, ETA could safely use the doctrine of equivalence to say, yes, we patented it in plastic, but it also applies to gold because, like I said, gold is a soft metal, or not even making that argument, just saying it works in any material. And that may seem strange because of the patent, the whole thing of, like, I made a big deal out of the fact that they limited it to plastic, but that's the nature of patent law. And the other nature of patent law, unfortunately, is that ultimately patent law is used against whoever has the less resources. So if you're a big company and you have unlimited budget for patent lawsuits, as long as there's a legal theory behind, a valid legal theory behind what you're doing, you can cost a counterparty a lot of money just by litigating over the conflict itself. So the doctrine of equivalence, maybe ETA would or would not win a case against a counterfeiter that made something in gold based on the doctrine of equivalence, but they could cost them $1 million in litigation costs. So essentially they can win just by making the claim. And that doesn't apply today because the patents are expired and the patents are only utility patents. But it would have applied in 1991. And because of that, again, it's like the guy that registered the mark, he either has nothing to do with it and it's a total coincidence that the mark is so similar, or it's just very unlikely that he's a counterfeiter and he spent that much money creating a counterfeit and then turned around and put his name on it and registered it, because it's like an instant way to find him. There's one other thing about that. My wife was asking, what if he only made one for himself? So then he would be like, I only made it for myself and then somebody stole it or whatever, and so it's not a patent infringement because I didn't intend to sell it. And the problem with that theory is that he didn't make it himself. Like, there's no way that anybody could make a case like that, particularly somebody who's not a watchmaker, as this guy appears to be. But even if they were the best watchmaker in the world, they would require the services of a precious metal case company, and that company would be violating the patent because they would be doing it. That would be contributory patent infringement. So let's say that he went to Lascor or La Central Bots or Picares and said, hey, can you help me? Those are the companies that were making Omega cases at the time. Can you help me make this case? They'd be like, that's a swatch case. No, we're not going to help you make it, because we would be infringing or contributing to infringement of their 1982 patent on the hinge design. So it's just not probable. I'm almost at the airport. So this, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the assay office of the Federal Office of Precious Metals is at the airport. So also at the airport is the PAL Expo, which is where Watches and Wonders takes place, starting, I think, middle of next week. So there's a banner up there, which you'll see if you're not just seeing the back of the truck. So this giant building that crosses the highway here, PAL Expo, is where Watches and Wonders is. Maybe too wide, but there's a banner for it over there on the left. The shot may be too wide for you to see that. Now we're going under PAL Expo, so the conference hall is actually above right now. Oh, also yesterday I stopped by but it was the office was closing. It was 4 o'clock or 4:05, and it closes at 4. So I already spoke to Mr. Garcia, I think his name was. I said I would come back today. So now we're going back under Pal Expo again. Yesterday when I drove up to this place, I know this building because it's the freight cargo building that this office is in, and it is a gigantic building. I've come here for years when I'm shipping camera equipment around the world, air cargo, and you can see it now. Oh shit, gotta turn here. Anyway, I parked, and then I was like, man, I'm never gonna find this office because the building is so huge. But then I looked behind me, and it was right at this parking spot, which is funny. Okay. So wish me luck. Okay, so I just showed them, or this guy in there wearing a Staten Island t-shirt. I used to live on Staten Island. I showed him everything and explained it, and he said they don't keep a record of the use of marks. And he looked at the pictures that I took of it and the stamp itself as it appears in their database, and he said that they wouldn't accept that stamp. They wouldn't accept a watch with that mark on it as being the same as the mark that's on the watch. So that, like, also when I sent them the mark by email and a very good picture of the stamp in the GG, they also said it was not the same, but that was the closest that they could find. So that, to me, kind of combined with my own thoughts about this mark, I don't think that this mark is the mark that's on the GG. I think if anything, it's somebody else's mark and it's a coincidence, or it's a kind of amateurish attempt to use the marking system and the responsibility mark system as a way of trying to see if there's a conflicting mark out there. Because I said, okay, you wouldn't approve a watch with this mark because they don't match, but if somebody tried to register the mark that's on the watch after this was registered, you would say there's a conflict, right? Because they're close enough that it would invite a conflict. And he said yes, or he said we would consider a conflict or whatever. To me, that's like everything, it's a gray area, but that's it for the responsibility mark.